Welcome to Tech Brothers. In this video, we're going to learn how to install SQL Server 2014 in cluster mode. The things that we require in order to accomplish this task. Number one, we need to have a cluster already installed with required resources and online. Number two, we need SQL Server 2014 installation media. Number three, if you're going to use a service account in order to install during the installation of SQL Server, you do need service account with the password. Let me put it down here. The reason I'm putting password because sometimes you do know the service account, but you do need the password as well during the installation. Number four, we need a SQL Server service name and IP address, since SQL Server is going to be installed as a role in cluster. So that's why anything that you actually application or role that you install on cluster needs to have an IP address. In my case, the IP address is this, and we will name it SQL 2014 cluster. So that's going to be our SQL service, a SQL Server service cluster name, and then IP address is 192.168.140. So let's get to the installation piece. Let me show you first how the cluster configuration looks like that I have. We'll go to Tools and open Failover Clustering Manager. Here's the cluster name, Tech Brothers Cluster, and the domain in this case is .techbrothers.local. And if you see the roles that I already installed is MSDT role. If you're going to use distribution transactions in SQL Server, then you need to have this role already installed. So I have already installed. You don't have to install it already, but you do need this role installed if you're going to use a distribution transaction. But I already installed it, so we'll concentrate just installing SQL Server 2014 in cluster mode. Node, I have two nodes. Both nodes are up. I'm just going through everything on the cluster side so that you would know that you need to check this before you start installing SQL Server. Even though the rules will check all of it, but it's better idea that you go through this before you start installation. Storage, I have disks. These are all shared disks. They're all online and they're on node 2 right now. So network is all up and running. So we're ready to install SQL Server in installation SQL Server 2014 in cluster mode. So let's go ahead and go to node 2 and open this is my media right here. Open it, right click and run as administrator. Keep in mind that you have to do this. In my case, I had to do this because if you don't run as administrator, it wouldn't talk between the services of node 1 and node 2, and the validation will fail. So you need to run as administrator. Click yes. One more thing I need to mention here, all the Hyper-V is running on my local machine, so it's a little bit slow. Please bear with me. It's starting up the installation. Alright, let's click on installation. First thing we need to do is new SQL Server Failover cluster installation. This is one node installation. Once we completed the installation on node 1, then we will add another node, and then once we're ready to do that, we'll click on add node to a SQL Server Failover cluster. So let's click on new SQL Server Failover cluster installation. rules. We're not going to use Microsoft Update to check for the updates, even though it's recommended. Next. Alright, here's the summary that the rule that it ran. So keep in mind that if you're doing on production, you may need to look each and every warning and resolve that situation before you start installation on production server. Up here we have a couple of warnings. Right now for this demo I don't care, because everything is on one machine and this is not a production. This is just to show you how to install SQL Server 2014 in cluster mode. So I'm gonna just go ahead and ignore the warnings. Click next. You have two options. We're gonna choose SQL Server feature installation, so click next. Here are the features that you can select. We're gonna go ahead and select the database engine. We're gonna go ahead and select the client tool connectivity and management tools. Let me see if we need to add any other sources. I wouldn't recommend doing the analysis services or reporting services. Both are not cluster aware. Even though there are ways that you can make them cluster aware, but I wouldn't recommend it. Always install analysis services or reporting services after the cluster installation. Even though you can choose now and it'll become, it won't be part of cluster aware, but it'll be really hard. You will see if you try to configure it later and try to work with it, there would be a lot of issues if you will go ahead and install as a during the cluster installation. So I would recommend that let's install the database engine services and client connectivity tools, as well as management tools. So let's go ahead and just click next. Alright, here if you wanted to keep SQL Server default, you have an option, or you can use a named instance. So I'm gonna go ahead and name the instance SQL Server SQL 2014. That's my named instance. Alright, click next. So SQL Server cluster resource name, as you can see, that it's gonna take as a SQL Server SQL 2014. So we're gonna keep it that way. So click next. These couple disks are already taken, so we're not won't be able to use that, but we can click disk 2 and disk 3 as a part of this cluster. Click next. Here's the setting that I was talking about. Let's go back to our notes. Up here is the IP address that we need to take, 192.168.1 and 40. So click on IPv4, click on give the IP address. everything looks okay. Click next. Here's the service account I was talking about right here. If you're using service account, up here you need to know the password of this account. So we're gonna go ahead and browse, and I'm gonna use this account as a service account. Click OK, give the password. These service accounts can be changed later anyway. Later on. Click OK, give password here. We're gonna keep the collation default. You can change the collation according to your country or your requirements, I should say. Alright, let me do this. Sometimes I type my password wrong. Still not taking it. Alright, this time it took it. Always install SQL Server in mixed mode. If you install Windows authentication mode only, then it's not gonna let you create SQL Server account. So I'll go ahead and you click on mixed mode. I'll put the SA password here. You have a option right here. If you wanted to make any other account, especially the service account, you can do it right now. Make it sysadmin, or click on as current account. Or if you have a different service account, but you're installing SQL Server with different account, you can go ahead and click on add and get that service account and add here. For that, you don't need password. So data directories up here, that's important. I have right now it says, you know, everything is F. If you look at it, I have the directories right here. F is data directory, log disk is log directory, and we're going to use these two directories for SQL Server right now. So we're going to keep the user data directory in here, and we're going to go ahead and change the log directory. I would recommend never keep log files and data files in the same disk. And temp DB, I'll go ahead and actually do C, but for production I would recommend that have a different temp DB disk, and it should be you know, according to your requirement, it should be pretty big actually, because this is the most busy database. So file stream, we're not going to enable file stream right now. I meant actually F. This will let you actually go ahead and do it, but it's, you know, C is never recommended for temp DB. That's why it gave us a little warning right here. So I'm gonna keep it F and L for and also temp DB for the temp DB directory. So click next. And here's the summary that what we have selected. We're gonna go ahead and click on install, and this is gonna take some time. I'm going to pause the video. As soon as installation is completed on this node, I'll be back. Alright, as you can see that we have completed the first part of our installation, which is single node SQL Server 2014 failover cluster installation. The next thing we're going to do is add node to a SQL Server failover cluster so that our installation will complete, and then after that we're going to do couple tests. We're going to fail over to the other node, and then from other node to the active node, and see that if everything is working right. So let's close this. Alright, we're on node 1 now. TechBrothers VM01 is the machine name. So the first part, as I said, that's completed. Second part is add node to a SQL Server failover cluster. We're going to click on that. Next, it's going to check some rules, and it should detect the instance that we have installed on node 2. Alright, some warnings. It says firewall is enabled. It's okay. Click next. And here's the instance that we just installed on node 2. So that is SQL 2014. We're gonna keep that. And here's a space summary right here. Click next. And we're gonna keep that same because this is our cluster ID that if you remember, we put that up there on 40. If you look back on our notes, right here is our SQL Server services cluster ID. So we're gonna click next. Next is service account. We're gonna go ahead and this one we'll give the password right here, and we'll be able to proceed further. If you remember that we changed from we gave the service account up there as a cluster admin up here in the first installation. So click next. And my password is wrong again. It's a little bit complicated password, so I have to really remember it. Click next. There you go. This is the summary. Click install. And it's gonna take a little bit of time. I'm gonna go ahead and pause the video, and I'll be back once the installation of adding a failover cluster node to a failover clustering installation of SQL Server is completed. To finish adding a failover cluster node, just to recap what we did, let me show you right here. First, we made sure that our cluster is up and running, and all the resources such as a network or shared disks are installed and online. Second, we made sure that we have a media. We used service account with the password, and then we used SQL Server service name and IP addresses. And just up here, first we installed on node 2, which is my active node, just so that you know. We installed SQL Server in clustering mode on node 2. We finished that installation, and after that, that was successful. We came on node 1, which is my passive node, and we added that node in our SQL Server failover clustering. Next thing, we're gonna run some tests whether this installation was successful. We're gonna do a failover. And after failover, we're gonna try to connect with SQL Server to see if everything went all right. Once that's completed, then that will sum up our video. So as you can see that as everything is successful here, it's just finishing up on node 2, I mean node 1. Yes, that's right, node 1. We're gonna go ahead and close this, and we're gonna go back to node 2, which is my active node. You can start, usually people start with node 1 as an active node. It's active passive installation. It doesn't matter what node you start, really. If you're active passive, start from the node that's active and then add the passive node to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and log into node 2. And fire up the failover clustering manager, which is right here. I'm going to go ahead and refresh it. Now if we look at the roles, you will see that the SQL Server is added in that. So what we're going to do is go ahead, right now it's on node 2, we're going to fail over to node 1 and see if it's successful. So if you right click, if you wanted to fail over SQL Server, you right click on that and click on move and select the node. Right now it's on node 1. The next possible node is node I'm sorry, then right now it's on node 2, and next possible node is node 1. So we're gonna select that and click OK and watch it fail over right here. So this went on offline, and they're gonna come online. This first will come online, and then the SQL services will come online. Right now the SQL engine is coming online. And now SQL Server engine. Everything came online on node 1. As you can see right now, the owner of the node, owner node is node 1. That is our passive node. Just in case if node 2, which is our active node in my case, will go down, everything will fail over to node 1. The next test is to connect with SQL Server and see if everything is working all right. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up SQL Server Management Studio. Management Studio should show up soon. It takes always a little bit of time to fire up Management Studio for the first time. Alright, this is our cluster name, and this is our SQL Server instance name. So let's see if we can connect it. And there you go. we're connected with SQL Server. All right. So basically this is it. I hope this video helped. Please stay tuned. My next video is going to be setting up availability group in SQL Server 2014, and it should be interesting. So please stay tuned. Thanks for watching.